Hello, insects of YouTube. This is Adam Noyce from Adam Noyce, and joining me is the newest member of the Sons of Sarazawa team, Andres Perez. Say hi.
Hello, people of the internet.
You see, he says it nice.
Yeah, I guess I've always liked to have a bit of a professional ambiance when I'm speaking in front of a reporter.
And then there's me, who gives a fuck. All right, and today we're going to be talking about three movies that I've wanted to talk about forever, but I wasn't sure if I was ever going to do it on my own, or, you know, every single movie on its own separate video, or just simply do a chat on it. And none of the other members of the Sons of Sarazawa have seen all three of these movies. They've seen like two of them, but they haven't seen one of them.
Because they're too lazy to get the box set?
The box set, yeah, that's exactly why. And I'm very happy that this person, I'm very happy that you've seen all three, which of course it is the TOHO collection, or Master Collection, which consists of the Japanese and English versions of Battle in Outer Space, Mothra, and the controversial H-Man. And, I love all three of these movies. I really freaking do. Two of these, I don't have much nostalgia. Actually, no. The only one that I don't have nostalgia for is the H-Man. The H-Man I saw the first time I saw it was when I was in 8th grade, so not too long ago.
Oh, wow.
But
how were you able to watch the H-Man if it wasn't released on DVD until 2009?
It played on TCM quite a bit.
Oh, wow.
It was a filler. They played all the original. They played all the English versions of the Showa Godzilla movies on TCM one night, and the H-Man came on when that was done. And I was like, "Ooh, this looks interesting." And
the only thing I ever saw. Oh, sorry. I just want to say the only Japanese movies I ever saw on TCM was Gamera the Invincible.
No, TCM's actually showing a lot more of the Godzilla movies now. Like, they just barely finally released the original Godzilla on TCM for the first time, and it was like a huge event.
Wow.
In fact, like, they had like the highest ratings for TCM in like the longest time ever. Anyway, so that was the first time I watched the H-Man, and it was the English cut, which isn't totally different from the Japanese version. It's just the Japanese cut really has just a lot more flamboyant dance scenes. But let's see, Mothra, the first time I saw that, I was in like 5th grade, so it's pretty nostalgic. And Battle in Outer Space, I remember watching when I was in 3rd grade, and I had no idea what it was, and just that awesome space battle at the ending. And that always stuck in my head. And then the first time I saw it was the first time I saw it again after it played on Sci-Fi when I was in 3rd grade, was when I bought this box set. And so it was a pretty big moment for me.
I really wish I had the nostalgia that you have for these films, because while I did grow up with Godzilla and Gamera as a child, I never really saw any other kaiju films or Japanese special effects heavy films outside of perhaps the original Rodan.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, the first time I saw any of these three movies was the Icons of Sci-Fi Toho Collection box set that was released by Sony.
Right. Oh, so you have absolutely, like, no nostalgia for these?
Right.
Oh, my.
I mean, I have heard that Mothra had I was aware that Mothra had her own film, much like Rodan, but outside of that, I would never have the chance to see any of those movies.
Yeah, and I guess
I was lucky enough to find Rodan on VHS at a Hollywood video store one day, probably when I was like in first kindergarten or 1st grade, but that's a whole other subject.
Well, yeah, and God, you know, just what was interesting was that this wasn't like Tokyo Shock, the company called Tokyo Shock, released this trilogy pack of kaiju films, which was the Mysterians, Matango, and Varan the Unbelievable, which I have. And you know, that's actually how I found the Columbia 3 DVD set, and I was like, oh, that's cool, I can finally have those. And so I got them, and I guess we can just start off by just talking about that horrible setup.
Oh yeah, definitely. That was like the first, when you asked me if I was interested in doing this chat. The first thing I said was we have to talk about the box set itself.
Oh my god! Oh my god!
The worst packaging I have ever seen on a DVD box set.
It's pretty close to the worst that I've ever seen. Like the cheapest setup I have ever seen, and almost like no respect for the DVDs at all.
Right. I mean, the fact, this was released by Sony, so it wasn't like this was a cheap company like, say, Mill Creek Entertainment. No, this was Sony. They could have easily have put a plastic flapper, or whatever it's called, to fit the other 2 discs. But no, they stacked all 3 discs on top of each other in the same slot.
So it's it's very easy for them to get scratched. And so I basically did, right now I'm probably showing the picture that you sent me, Andres, because that's the same exact thing that I did. Like, I am at least going to show some respects for it. And to be honest, I hate the DVDs themselves too. I think
they're like blank. They look like I literally own bootlegs that look that look 10 times better than these discs.
Oh my god, yeah. And let me just tell you, oh god. The DVDs themselves, not actually the DVDs, but when you pop them in and you actually look at their layout, so cheap and so overly ridiculous. Because you look at that, and then you look at the Toho Masterworks ones, the ones where they released the Godzilla English version and Japanese version, and at least they had a really cool menu design and stuff like that. Like, at least your eyes are kind of looking all around. Those are some great menus, and then all of a sudden you got this piece of shit, and I think the TriStar DVDs, as bare bones as they were, at least looked more presentable than this box set. Oh god, yes. And then there's like the audio commentaries were interesting, but what bugged me was that they had this section on Battle in Outer Space where they were talking about the restoration of these movies. Bullshit. The quality of these movies in this box set are not great. They're really grainy. And it's not because this film is old either. It just looks like it was because they lowered the quality just to fit both movies on the same disc. That's exactly what it looked like to me. And one of the most disappointing box sets I have ever gotten.
Yeah, I wasn't as bothered by the video quality so much. Probably because, I don't know, maybe because they're older films, I guess I have, like, lower expectations, I guess. And plus, I grew up from an era where, where you had, like, VHSs that looked even worse. So, I guess, I didn't have that much expectations.
No. The reason why I just got mad about it was because they made this huge deal when they were promoting these DVDs on they've restored the movies. And they're bringing them to you for the first time in the original Toho scope. Which, if you do it well, like what they did with the Toho Masterworks DVDs, they're great and they're spectacles to watch. But Jesus Christ, the quality was just so, to be honest, pathetic.
Now, I do want to bring this up. I think I've mentioned this before on Facebook, but is it possible that perhaps it's a good thing that they don't look all that clean? Because I've always had this idea where maybe it's a bad thing to try and make these older special effects heavy movies look as clean as they can be, because maybe by taking away all that grain, all those dusts and scratches, you kind of make the special effects look more fake. In a way.
I don't have that problem because on the Criterion Collection release of the original Godzilla, they cleaned it up a lot, and it still looks spectacular. Even War of the Gargantuas, they had to clean up a lot. And it still looks absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there.
And so I would watch this. And also The Mysterians, I don't know if you've seen that, but that is a fantastic movie. And also very visual effects heavy. And when Tokyo Shock released it, and they restored it almost to Blu-ray quality, it didn't take anything away from that. Like, that still looks fantastic.
I guess when it comes to like making these older films look more presentable, the one thing that really sticks out to me are the blue screen effects. That's the only thing that I really noticed.
Well, like, those are actually, I really found that interesting on the audio commentary on the Battle in Outer Space, was that they explained why there's always these blue rings around them. That's because when they were compositing the shots, sometimes the film roll would shrink just ever so little. And so, therefore, you'd have, unfortunately, those blue lines. But you know what? That's unavoidable. That's unavoidable. For something that was made back then, even if it wasn't restored, you'd still see them.
It was still a brand new procedure, I guess. Well, I guess they've been using it since King Kong, but when it comes to, it was still brand new in the world of color filmmaking.
With Japan, it was very new, and this was before Eiji Tsuburaya purchased the optical printer. And the first time he used the optical printer was in Mothra vs. Godzilla, and you can definitely tell. And so a lot of these had to be done like frame by frame, which makes me appreciate it even more. Which makes me a little bit even angrier at the fact that they didn't even bother to really restore it because of just how much effort and how much precision Eiji Tsuburaya and Ishiro Honda and all of the crew just put into the movie, and suddenly we have these shitty DVDs.
I just want to bring up two things when it comes to the box set. One, what do you think of the actual cover of the box set?
The actual cover I actually like. The design I personally like. And I love the back. The description on the back is amazing.
I kind of think it's a bit too random. I like how they try to incorporate Photoshop stills from all three movies together to make this, whole collage. But I'm not really sure about the whole coloring, especially with that purple
The coloring
in
was
there.
Weird. The coloring was weird. Like, it worked for Mothra, but not for Battle in Outer Space. And stuff like that. It could even work with the H-Man, because how everything kind of glows a green with that. But I personally didn't mind the actual cover and the artwork on the box set at all. Like, that description on the back was really good.
I also like how it says from the father of Godzilla, so at least they're advertising this box. They know who their audience is.
They know exactly who their audience is, and right, and which makes just the DVDs themselves a little bit more of a letdown.
And the other thing I want to bring up was I forgot what it was. Now I remember. Do you think these three movies felt kind of random, or do you think each of the three movies complement each other?
I don't think it was random, because I honestly think the only reason why they released these three movies was because they were all released by Columbia, and these were the only three Toho films that were.
Oh, okay.
I think that was the only reason why. I think and also, if you look at it, they were made in consecutive years. So I guess that would make sense too, because we had the H-Man, Battle in Outer Space, and Mothra. They were all made in consecutive years.
I think it makes sense. At first I thought it was a bit too random. I felt like, at least with the Toho pack by Tokyo Shock, these three movies had to do with like some sort of monster of some kind.
Right.
But then I thought, it does complement Ishiro Honda's work. You have Alien Invasion movie, a sci-fi mystery movie, and a giant monster movie. So I felt like it kind of covered all these different areas that this director was involved in.
Was working with, right. And I actually want to get into that when we get talking about the movies. But so yeah, I thought this DVD box set was really just a giant letdown for the most part. I mean, I was still happy that I was able to see, especially in Mothra's case, the Japanese version.
I got this because of Mothra.
Right. And
although I kind of wish that they would have had a lot of special effects. Not special effects. I wish they had more special features for Mothra, considering what a big icon she is in the history of kaiju films and Japanese cinema.
I really wish the biggest letdown for this DVD, actually, or this box set, for me was they put a lot of detail, like adding an audio commentary and stuff like that, on Battle in Outer Space and Mothra, but they did nothing for the H-Man.
They just added like a bunch of unrelated trailers.
Unrelated trailers, and I was like, oh, really? To be honest, the H-Man was the one that I wanted to learn more about, because I wanted to know how the hell they made that blob move. I want to know how the hell they even came up with the idea of this.
I think I had an idea of how it moved, but I guess we'll get into that when we actually talk about the H-Man.
I just would have been like, that's so cool. I really wish they had an audio commentary for the H-Man as well. Even if
we can make our own commentary.
Right. Because the H-Man is such a bizarre movie. I guess, any more thoughts on the DVD box set itself?
Not really. Other than overall, it's very... well, I'm grateful to have it, but it just turned out to be very disappointing.
Yeah, same here. So I guess on to the movies, and I guess we'll just go into the order of which they were made, and we'll start off with the H-Man, if that's okay with you.
Oh, sure, definitely.
God, is this movie bizarre.
I really love this movie. I've always been a fan of like mystery thrillers. It almost has like that old school kind of like detective noirish sort of feel, especially in certain scenes where it's like very dark and shadow heavy. But then you add in this sci-fi element and a bit of horror element. So it's like a genre bending in a way, or genre mixing.
Yeah, and you see, this movie, I said controversial because it is, and if you either like this movie or you hate it. I haven't really seen a middle for it yet, and I like it. The only issue that I really have with this movie is that it felt like Ishiro Honda wanted to make a different movie.
Really?
To me, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's two movies that just kind of scream to me that Ishiro Honda didn't really want to make that movie. And not because he didn't want to make it. I mean, like, he wanted to make a different movie. He didn't want to make a sci-fi movie. And it was The H-Man and Dogora the Space Monster. Those were two movies that I felt like Ishiro Honda didn't want to make a sci-fi film. He wanted to make a police detective story. And this film...
it does feel like more like a police detective story in this movie.
Yeah. And, I mean, it's not saying that it's bad, because, again, I liked it. Because, to me, this movie at least felt like they incorporated the whole mystery, even though that's some of the most ridiculous pseudoscience I've ever heard. For the 50s, it was...
basically, radiation turns you into a liquid, sentient liquid.
And I was like, no. But, of course, back then they didn't really know too much about it.
To them, the science was sound.
To them, the science was sound. And then we watch it now, we're like, no, the science most certainly is not sound. But, really interesting movie. Right from the get-go, really interesting music. Really interesting movie. Very ominous, just how the opening credits just rolls over the ship, just sailing. And that's really creepy.
I do. When you mentioned the music, I really liked the whole jazzy nightclub music that they had going on.
It's Masaru Sato, which something else that's interesting.
Was he the one that did the music for the 70s Godzilla films?
He did the music for Godzilla Raids Again, which was his first film he ever composed for, which is why he always kept going back to Godzilla. He did the score for Godzilla Raids Again, Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, Son of Godzilla.
I love the score for Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster.
Yeah, me too. But he did the score for Son of Godzilla and Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla.
Oh, and that's my favorite score.
That's my favorite one. Yeah.
No wonder I like this music.
It's very Masaru Sato. And something else that was interesting about this DVD set is that each film had a different composer.
Oh, nice. Music.
Yeah, like one of them, Battle in Outer Space, Akira Ifukube. Mothra was, I forgot that person's name, and then there's Masaru Sato for this one. And let me tell you, I think him doing the music for this movie really fit, because if Akira Ifukube did the music, it wouldn't have worked, because Akira Ifukube doesn't have that jazzy sounding kind of feel.
His music is more like patriotic.
Yeah,
military sort of feel.
Yeah, Akira Ifukube really prides himself on those military marches, while Masaru Sato is very jazzy. He prides himself on percussions and jazz, and if you listen to all of his scores, he definitely has that feel to it. So I thought the music fit. I thought the music really fit.
Now, there were two scenes where you had that one character whose name I unfortunately forgot, but she was her character was singing in English. Do you think that was actually her? Did they like overdub that?
No, it wasn't. It was her lip syncing.
Okay.
Miss what's her name?
There.
Chicago or something like that. Her name was Chicago. Hold on.
Yeah.
Type it up. I forgot her name.
I'm gonna look up the.
I'm just gonna put the movies up on. Yeah, because it's bugging me. But you have Mizaki. So right from the get-go, it's interesting because you have Mizaki, who is talked about throughout the entire movie. He dies at the very beginning of the movie, and you're like, "What the fuck just happened?" And
it sets up the mystery.
Right, and that's a really creepy scene too. Because suddenly he's walking away. You can tell he's in a lot of pain, and then all of a sudden he gets hit. And then all of a sudden everyone's like, "Oh, didn't you just hit somebody? No, he's gone. What the hell is this shit?"
And then like they find his clothes, like, "Oh, so he's running? Is he running around naked or something?"
Right. And I love how they make fun of that dude, like he's running around naked in the rain. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Of course, don't they know the science is sound? Like I said.
H-Man. And then also, I just want to say one of the cops who plays in a lot of he played. In Mothra vs. Godzilla, he played the evil guy who bought the egg.
He was the one with glasses and the mustache, right?
No, he was the guy that blew smoke. He's the guy that on Mothra vs. Godzilla he blew smoke into the camera lens.
Oh, okay.
And he said that picture ought to be excellent. You know who I'm talking about? Can you at least put? All right.
Let's see. What was this character's name?
I don't know. He was a police officer. He was very much like a badass in this movie. Yeah. Hold on, I think I might have found him. No, I didn't. I don't know what his name is. Anyways, he's in this movie, and he plays a very much like rough and gruff, kind of straightforward police cop. And he's the one that winds up getting completely swallowed by the H-Man. He charges the H-Man like he's going to punch him with the back of his gun, and then all of a sudden he just gets completely swallowed by it. And then he dissolves, which is one of the coolest visual effects shots in a movie, in my opinion. But, God, it was really strange movie, and there's not really many differences. There's not really too many big differences between the English and Japanese version in this movie. The only differences were in the Japanese version, the dance scenes were a lot longer, which kind of slowed the pace down a little bit. But I don't really have a big problem with that.
Yeah, neither do I. Like, as we both mentioned before, we enjoyed the music.
Right. And it is a really bizarre movie because it really felt like it just wanted to be a police drama, but Ishiro Honda had no choice to add in this whole thing with
the H-Man?
With the H-Man, yeah, it was really weird. And though I do have to say, some of the scenes, the scene where they're talking about the boat, or where they're asking the people who saw the H-Man, that's actually a really creepy scene. And you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of the opening of Godzilla 1984, where the main character goes up on the boat and sees all the dead bodies. To be honest, that's exactly what it reminded me of, and it wouldn't surprise me if they were paying homage to that.
Could be.
But a very creepy scene, and again, just a testament to Masaru Sato's score. It really fit. It was really creepy, and in my opinion, really well done.
I mentioned before how this sort of like was mixing genres, and that particular flashback sequence really was really more of gave you a horror genre feel to it.
Right. And then
would you say it almost like gave you like a Matango sort of feeling?
Matango, the only difference between this and Matango in terms of feeling, Matango I like a lot more than this movie, I will say that right now. I think Matango is a masterpiece, but This movie, I can see where you get that. I really can. I don't know. Like, something else that I thought was really good in this film were the visual effects.
Oh yeah, my favorite parts were the parts that I was most impressed with were the scenes where you see like the characters melting and you just see their clothes collapse on each other while like this blue substance is just oozing out of the clothing.
Right, and those are really good. Really kind of disgusting scenes too, and I know like a lot of people have compared this movie to The Blob, and rightfully so. Yeah. But I would pick this movie over The Blob every time, just because this movie to me had a lot more interesting of a story behind it. Mm-hmm. Like something that grabbed me about this movie, besides the fact that it was made by Ishiro Honda, and any person who's a fan of Ishiro Honda really needs to watch this movie. Was the fact that this film had a really interesting story to accompany with these visual effects. Because the story, at least the mystery with the guy trying to get Misaki. Yeah. His name is Uchida. That gangster. That was interesting. And I literally wanted to know, well, was Misaki still alive? Were they actually going to make it out of this? I actually liked that. I thought it was really, really interesting, and I cared about these characters for the most part. Definitely the two, I guess we can go into the characters now. The two that I really liked was Chikako, which is the lead female, and Tominaga, who is the detective, the main detective, played by Akiko Hirata, who played Dr. Serizawa. And those were the two that I really liked.
It's funny that, what was his name? Akihiko Hirata. Yeah. He has a very recognizable face. You can easily, like, growing up with these movies, I easily noticed him throughout throughout the whole series, throughout the whole Godzilla series, and so
right, you can instantly recognize him. And also, he has a very distinct voice. Like, if you listen to the original Japanese dialogue of him, he has a very deep voice for an Asian, and it's very distinct, and he definitely has a stage presence on all the films that he's in. Even Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, for God's sakes.
He was the leader of he was not the leader, but he was like one of the head guys.
Yeah, he was one of the head guys of the Red Bamboo, right? The Red Bamboo, and you could just tell
path, right?
Yeah, he was having the time of his life doing that. You could just tell he was. But anyways, I like Tominaga. Let's talk about Tominaga. Tominaga was cool. Because at first he was exactly what I would have done in that position. He was like, he wants to solve this murder mystery, and he wants to solve this drug issue. Because in Japan at the time, drugs were a huge goddamn issue.
Oh, were they now?
Yeah, in Japan at this time, well up until like 1965 or 6, drugs were a huge issue, especially heroin. Heroin was bad in Japan. And it ran rampant, and so I thought that was interesting. But anyways, what's cool about Tominaga is that when Masada, the main scientist played by Kenji Sahara, goes up to him and is telling him all this stuff, he doesn't believe him, and he's like, "I just want to solve this mystery. Do it on your own time." And I like that because I was like, yeah, I would do the same thing if I was in Tominaga's position. I would have been like, no, that sounds too far-fetched. And then all of a sudden when he finds out that the H-Man is really there because he sees it for himself, he's like, nope, never mind. In fact, there's that scene where Masada goes back up to Tominaga and goes, hey, don't you still want to catch Uchida, who's the main bad guy?
Yeah.
And he goes, no, the H-Man's more important. And I was like, yes. That's good.
Yeah, it's very interesting how he always knows what's in the which I guess target is the I forgot what's the best way to say this what to prioritize in what situation.
Right, and his friendship with Masada is interesting too. You can just tell that they're friends, And
I like how they have this this growing friendship. At first, he just sees Masada as nothing more than a nuisance who's just constantly getting in the way.
Right.
But then as time progresses, they both kind of depend on each other's strengths in order to solve this situation.
Right. Like when Masada goes down into the sewers to find Chikako, and Tominaga's screaming like, "What the hell? What are you doing?" So little stuff like that just adds to Tominaga's character that I really liked, and I think a lot of it does have to do with Akihito Harada's performance, because really, if you just look at his character just laid out on a piece of paper, it's very bland and very stereotypical.
Yeah, I was when we were getting into the characters, I was going to bring up the fact that I thought the characters weren't all that memorable,
right?
But like you mentioned, the actors themselves were able to bring this material to raise this material to to a higher level,
right? And
raise the entertainment value of this film.
Yeah, like Tominaga, if you look at it, kind of a boring character, but I thought just how Akihito Harada portrayed him was interesting. And to be honest, memorable. I could remember that character. Not
so much with Masada personally.
Yeah, not so much with Masada.
He's just that young, eager, wants to prove something to the world that eventually he's going to get his way because he's like the main protagonist.
Right. So that's really all I have to say about Tominaga. I mean, decent character. So I guess on to my personal favorite character in the movie, Chikako, the lead female, the damsel in distress. She really is my favorite character in this, because she really is going through hell. She's got gangsters on her heels, she has the police watching her every move, and she's got Masada watching her every move, and the only person that really cares about her is Masada. And so she's caught in the middle of this goddamn gang war, plus the police. The police don't trust her at all. The only one that really has shown any sign of trust for her is Masada. And I think she's really interesting because of that. And what I really like is that just how much she really does care for Mizaki. Like, throughout the entire thing, she lies several times throughout the entire thing to protect Mizaki.
Yeah.
And
I did like that aspect. You have this one character who's not directly involved, but is still partially involved in this larger underground world, and the consequences of being involved with such people, with such a world.
Right. And she was interesting because of that, definitely. And then I love how she slowly starts falling in love with Masada. Or I don't even know if they really fall in love, they just become that kind of relationship where Masada's the only one she can trust, and she's the only one that Masada can really trust as well. And
I didn't really... Sorry, I just want to say that I didn't really saw it as much of a... I didn't really see that much of a love connection between the two of them. I just thought that they were just two people helping each other out. But then all of a sudden, Tominaga, he just brings up this one line where he's like, tells Masada to take care of Chikako. I'm like, wait, what?
What?
Love story now?
yeah. And that's in both versions.
Together? I didn't notice this.
That was in both versions. I was like, is there like a scene missing here? What the hell just happened?
Yeah.
But
so yeah, I didn't really. I wasn't really that big of a. I just thought that the whole what would you say? The love story between these two wasn't fully fleshed out or didn't go into depth.
And something else that. And this is in Ishiro Honda. Ishiro Honda does this a lot when it comes to romances. He leaves it up to the imagination. He doesn't throw it in your face like Hollywood did at the time and still does. He left it up to the imagination because, to be honest, he was very uncomfortable making romances, and so I think that really comes through in this one. Some people said that they can really see this relationship working out. Some people say they can't. I'm in the middle. Like, if they wound up falling in love, because when they were holding each other by the end of the movie, I thought it was very sweet, and the music was very calm, and you could definitely tell that there was something there. At least for me, I could see that there was something there between the two. But at the same time, I wasn't like, oh, they're going to instantly fall in love. Like, right from when they first meet each other, I wasn't like, oh, they're going to fall in love. Yeah, I wasn't like that. I was just like, Masada at first was just really interested in her because he wanted to know what happened to Mizaki for scientific reasons. And then over the course. And even over the course of the movie, there's this scene where Chikako faints because she's so tired, which I honestly think is a good scene, but she faints inside the science office there. And it just shows how much faith Ishiro Honda had in science, or scientists at the time, was that all the scientists just came to her aid and just let her lie down on the bed. They gave her a blanket and stuff like that. They were showing her compassion, which was the complete opposite of what the police were showing her, and definitely the gangsters. I mean, the gangsters, there's even a scene which for an Ishiro Honda movie was actually kind of surprising, even though it's very tame. Very tame by today's standards. But that scene where she gets beaten up by that gangster.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like, I mean, God,
that was
for today,
that was the one where he was like interrogating her, like in her own apartment room.
Yeah, and it's very creepily shot too. Like,
yeah,
that's very low lighting. Yeah.
When I brought up the whole noir aspect, that was the one scene I was thinking of when I said that.
Yeah, that was very
just like
noir.
That dark, like I said, dark shadow. It's very dark. The characters are in shadow. You just have no music whatsoever.
Yeah, and I mean, he's just like, and I mean, they don't even show his face. They just show the barrel of the gun for the most part, and he's just like, you'll know what happened. You know what'll happen to you if you talk or something like that. And he just starts hitting her. And for an Ishiro Honda movie, that's pretty drastic. Because he didn't like to depict violence very much in terms of human characters, and I'm going to speak to that when I talk about Battle in Outer Space. But
I was gonna bring up that aspect as well when we go into Mothra.
Yeah. Oh God, but that was a rather entertaining but horrible fight scene. But
we'll get to that quite shortly.
But yeah, so Chikako is my favorite character. I don't know if she's yours.
No, not really. She didn't really leave that much of an impression on me. I mean, I thought that her character was kind of bland, I guess. Like, that's such the case with like Tominaga and Masada, but I guess she didn't leave as much of an impression on me as Akihiko Hirata did with his role.
Right. Okay, well, I can see that. I just like Chikako because there's just a whole... Another thing that I liked about her was that even though all this shit's going down, she still needs to make a living, and so she still goes out on stage and sings. I thought that added another level of realism, to be honest, to this.
Yeah.
There was just one scene that really bugged me with her, and that was when she sees the H-Man. She sees the H-Man, and this is the big scene in the movie, where she sees the H-Man, and... all of a sudden, she calls Masada, and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing, you dumb bitch? Run! Don't go into an enclosed room.
Was that the same scene where another dancer got eaten by the H-Man?
Yeah, that was disturbing, too, because I was just like, oh, I feel really bad for her, because she gets thrown into the middle of this whole thing. Nope, the H-Man just eats her. I was like, oh.
The biggest blemish in terms of special effects was probably most likely that scene for me.
Well, that scene was
it's just like a still of that dancer, and you just see this animated blob just like cover this.
And to be honest, I liked that was the one cut in the English cut that I like better. Is they cut that shot out in the English version. And
no, I didn't see the English version.
Yeah, the English version they cut it out, and well, you forget that the first time I ever watched this was just the English version. It was on TCM, and it was cut out, and I was like, oh, it actually leaves a lot more. I like it better that the English version left it more to the imagination what happened to her. Because in the Japanese version, that shot's awful. I know they couldn't really
awkward because it takes a while for that scene to finish.
Yeah, and I knew that they did what they could with what they had, but it was just awful. It really looked terrible.
Throughout the majority of the film, you see they use actual props to portray the H-Man.
And some of them are really good. Some of them are really good. Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Like some of the scenes where that police cop gets swallowed by it. That was a great visual effects shot. Just in terms of just some of the practical effects that Eiji Tsuburaya was working with. And something else that I thought added believability in terms of the visual effects for this scene. For this movie there wasn't really a giant monster. There wasn't a giant monster. Everything literally could have been done.
Sort of like a widespread zombie virus sort of situation.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that also helped Ichi Tsuburaya and Ishiro Honda out a lot, was that they could do a lot more sophisticated shots with this movie because they could be on the same set together. And that, I think, helped the movie quite a bit for most of the visual effects shots, because most of the visual effects shots in this movie are really good. Like, the H-Man himself is really well done.
Very. I like how it, like they said, it has a sort of a... They mentioned, like, the reason why the H-Man came to Japan, or like, I think Tokyo in particular, was because it still had remnants of its human mind.
And that was interesting.
And find its way home.
Yeah, I guess let's bring that up when we get into the story of the movie, because that's actually a very good point that I wanted to bring up. But the last character I really want to talk about was Masada, played by Kenji Sahara, a very young Kenji Sahara. And God, was he boring.
Yeah, like I already mentioned before, it's a character you've seen before. He doesn't add much to the role.
He's very much a stock character.
Yeah, very forgettable in my opinion.
And the one scene that I couldn't help but laugh at was the car chase.
Oh yeah, I think I remembered seeing that car chase, and I forgot what I was thinking about it. I think it was like that. It was like a very slow pace.
I was like, this is the slowest car chase I've ever seen, and I'm like, oh, watch out for that red light. Oh, we got to go to speed limit now. And I'm just like, I'm just like, this is painful.
Now, if this was New York, I'd probably understand, because there's like it's heavy traffic there. But
I know, but
yeah, there's like.
I'm like, what the hell? Oh. And it wasn't dramatic. The music was so fast-paced, it actually made it laugh. It makes you laugh.
Driver, what are you doing? There are kids crossing the road, sir.
There are kids crossing the road. Wait, why aren't you matching a speed? Well, the speed is only 30 miles per hour. And that's exactly what I was saying. I was laughing because I was like, we have to travel the speed limit now. Oh my God. God, one of the worst car chases ever. The only car chase that I've ever seen that's worse than that was the one from Godzilla Raised Again. But
this makes me prefer the chase scene from Godzilla vs. Megalon, like the car and motorcycle chase scene.
Oh, well, that one was at least a lot of fun. That one was at least a lot of fun. It wasn't intense or anything, but it was a lot of fun. And this one was just
that had a much lower budget compared to this.
And then all of a sudden, this movie was just like, that was just painful. That car chase was awful.
Yeah.
But Masada, very boring character. You've seen him done a million times before. Very forgettable. Okay, so let's talk about the story, because I have mixed feelings about the story itself. Let me tell you, the movie has moments like that where it says, well, the only reason why I came back to Tokyo was because it has some human left to it, but it never follows through with it. It never goes
I mean, it would have been cool if, like, the H-Men were to sort of talk or something. Just like more of that.
And,
make the characters feel guilty about killing them.
Right, and I know this is done a lot later, though. I don't know if you've seen it, but one of Ishiro Honda's favorite movie he ever made was The Human Vapor, and that movie was wonderful. That movie was beautiful, and
I unfortunately have not seen The Human Vapor, although was the Human Vapor itself a fully sentient character?
Yeah, what happened was he got exposed to radiation or something like that, and then I haven't seen it for a while. And it's basically a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story. That's what it was. Because the H-Man part of him starts driving him insane. And it's a really good psychological... Anyways, that's The Human Vapor. But that movie, the whole key to that is the H-Man the Human Vapor is taking over the main character's psychic. He's taking over his human side, and so it's a huge battle between is he going to try to maintain his humanity, or is he going to let the Human Vapor consume him? And that was a huge part of the film. In this movie, I felt like could easily have had that. Like, it could have had the H-Man towards the end just go, help me, or something, and I was like, that would work.
but they don't follow through with it. And that's my problem with the story, is that there's several times where it doesn't follow through with some of the stuff that it produces, or some of the ideas that it has.
Yeah. Wasn't like what was the name of the character who that one character who becomes an H-man at the opening of the film?
Yes.
Yeah, Chikako's boyfriend.
Yeah, there's Misaki, which that would have been interesting too. What if Misaki became the H-man, or was one of the H-men?
I thought he did. And I thought he did, and when watching the movie, I thought he was going to like show up as an H-man, like perhaps during like the final confrontation. But
they don't.
Yeah, that nothing about him ever shows up.
Nothing happens, and that's the letdown with the story. Is that it has a lot of these aspects to it that just kind of lose its face. And my other issue that's with it, unless you have anything else to add to that.
No, other than that, the movie kind of devolves into a monster on the loose, we got to stop it before it spreads kind of plot.
And the...
Although, go ahead.
Here is my other issue with the story, is that, for the most part, it's pretty coherent in balancing the film noir, police drama with the science fiction. But when it's first introduced, it is so clunky. I mean, it gets better as the movie goes on, it gets more cohesive. But when it is first introduced, it is so clunky. It drove me nuts. I was like, that is the worst way for you to introduce this.
I didn't have that much of a problem because I figured like they're trying to establish this very real, for the most part, very realistic world, and then trying to like shatter that world by bringing back the sci-fi element that they introduced during the opening.
Yeah, I didn't have that. I was just like, well, this movie felt an awful lot, kind of like what the original Godzilla did. What the original Godzilla did that was so well was that it was able to put science fiction into the real world perfectly. And I felt like this movie did it, or wanted to do that, or Ishiro Honda wanted to do that, but it was just so goddamn clunky at the beginning.
I see.
And that just, it didn't drive me crazy, because, again, it got better as the movie went on.
I didn't notice that they did bring up this aspect of the H-man itself. I think like during the very end, I think the last words that were said were perhaps if humanity were to ever like destroy themselves in a nuclear war, then perhaps the H-man would be the next step in human evolution.
Yeah, I
think they may have. So yeah, I like that idea, and I think they may have taken that idea and used it for Godzilla versus Hedorah, because they do make a similar claim, I think, where they said that perhaps if humans destroy themselves and with pollution, then perhaps Hedorah is the next logical step in life.
Yeah, and I mean I like that too. And the music complemented the scene too. First off, some great visual effects too. How everything just catches on fire, and Masaru Sato's music slowly builds up. It's really good and a really well done scene. In fact, the entire third act of this movie, other than the car chase, I think is really good.
I just remembered that maybe you had that whole era, you had that ending scene where everything is set on fire. I was thinking, is it possible that perhaps that might have been inspired by the original Godzilla, where again, like something was happening in Tokyo Bay with the oxygen destroyer. Here, something's happening with Tokyo Bay, but instead everything's on fire.
It could be, to be honest. I don't think it is, because this was written by completely different people. But it could have been. I thought like the whole epilogue with Dr. Maki, who says maybe this will be the next step in human evolution, maybe the next dominant species would be the H-man. I felt like that was complimenting the original Godzilla, because that sounded very much so like Dr. Yamane's, well, if we keep continuing these nuclear tests, another Godzilla will rise somewhere else again. And it felt an awful lot like that, even though I think it was a coincidence. But again, Ishiro Honda has a lot of these elements that just repeat in all of his movies. So again, it could be. I don't think it was, but it very well could have been.
So with that said, should we give our final thoughts on the H-Man?
Yeah, sure. You can go.
Okay, I overall really like The H-Man, mostly because I'm a big fan of the whole mystery, noirish genre, and with the added element of sci-fi. I didn't really think it was, I wasn't as bothered with the pacing or editing as you did. The characters were very stocked they were very stocked for the most part, but I felt like the actors did a decent portrayal, most notably Akihiko Hirata. I really enjoyed the special effects. They were well executed for the most part, and of course the music was perhaps the best aspect for me, anyways. So I overall really recommend this movie to fans of Japanese special effects sci-fi films.
For the most part, I agree with you.
Again, I think what really I had to keep in mind with this movie was that it was very prototypey, considering that the Human Vapor was made soon after this, which is pretty much the H-Man perfected.
I guess maybe that's my problem, that, I have not seen the Human Vapor, so I have nothing to compare this film to.
Right, and again, if you just want to watch a good mystery science fiction movie, watch or a Ishiro Honda movie, watch the Human Vapor. But this is a good prototype. Yeah, I mean, I do like the movie. Don't think that I don't. It's definitely... It's one of those movies I'd like to watch on a rainy afternoon. Still, it is an entertaining movie. It really is. I have a lot of fun with it. Okay, so what would you give this movie?
For a rating, I'd probably give it 3 out of 5. Very decent movie. It's for an enjoyable afternoon. Nothing that you would probably want to go back to every now and then, but like I said, decent watch.
Yeah, I'd give the movie 3 out of 4 because it's very entertaining to watch its absurdity, but also it's very fun at the same time, or it's actually kind of smart at the same time. So, like, I really enjoyed it. So again, I give this movie a 3 out of 4. One of the weaker Ishiro Honda movies, if you really look at it, in the long run, in terms of some of the stuff that especially with the 2 movies that we're going to talk about after, or right now. If you watch The H-Man, you realize it really is the weakest out of the 3 movies.
Oh boy, I sense some disagreement in the near future.
Oh no. Oh no. Okay. Alright, so that was The H-Man, and on to my personal favorite out of all 3 of these movies, Battle in Outer Space. Oh my god, I love this movie. Even though the plot's really boring.
see, that's where it lost me with when it comes to Battle in Outer Space, or BIOS as I like to call it.
BIOS.
BIOS. I don't know, maybe I've been playing too much BioShock.
Right.
I think of BIOS. But yeah, I wish I could share your enthusiasm for this film. Unfortunately, I do not, because, like you said, the story I felt was incredibly underwhelming. And I guess we can start right now, wherever you'd like to start.
Well, what's really a letdown is that, well, to be honest, I wouldn't have any of the problems that I had with the plot if it wasn't for the fact that I listened to the audio commentary, which pointed everything out, and I was like, oh, god damn it. And, it was, to be honest, more of a letdown. The only reason why I really love this movie so much is because of the visual effects, and being a huge sci-fi guy, or being a huge technical guy, just the science in this movie is really cool and really good, actually. Actually surprisingly accurate, too. But anyways, it's just considering that this was made in the shadow of the Mysterians is what gets it a letdown. Is what makes it quite a bit of a letdown. Because the Mysterians was perfect.
For me, the Mysterians, I felt like it was almost on the same level as Battle in Outer Space. The only 2 things that really stuck out for me that made me think of Mysterians in a higher as a better movie was I felt like the characters were more fleshed out. Especially that one character who switches sides over to the Mysterian side. I really like that.
Yeah, he was a good character. Yeah,
and of course you have a giant robot in the middle of all this, which I guess it's not really. It doesn't affect the story in overall terms, but the fact that you have an iconic looking figure in the Mysterians, whereas here it's kind of generic aliens with with the sort of technology you've seen in other movies, except for that gravity weapon.
Yeah, and also just right from the get-go, you could tell that this movie's a lot different in terms of pace than the Mysterians, because a lot of people have the misconception, and Wikipedia doesn't help it either, because Wikipedia says it, but this movie isn't a sequel to the Mysterians. It isn't.
What were their? I know the reason why was because they shared similar props.
Yeah, they shared the Natal UFOs were the same as the Mysterians, except they were painted a different color. And wasn't that satellite at the beginning of the movie? Didn't that came from another movie or showed up in another movie? No, I thought that was made in this one. That was made for this one. And it was used.
I swear I've seen that satellite before in another movie.
Yeah, you've seen it a lot in other movies, but it's because of this. And right from the get-go, you could just tell that this isn't going to be the same kind of movie, because right from the get-go starts with an action scene. It starts with the three UFOs destroying the base. It starts immediately. You're thrown into the action, unlike the Mysterians, which has this really slow opening and really ominous opening, which I really don't like to compare it to the Mysterians, because if you look at it, even the tone of the Mysterians is a lot different than this movie. In terms of all of the Ishiro Honda movies I've seen, this one, to be honest, is probably the most epic. And I'm not saying that in terms of how good it is, because really, if you look at it, if it wasn't for my science guy aspect about this movie, I really wouldn't think this movie was anywhere near. It'd probably be actually one of his weaker films, in my opinion. But if you look at it,
I have a feeling that. Sorry, but before you go on, I have a feeling that maybe like the reasons why we like, you like Battle in Outer Space so much, and the reason why I like H-Men so much, I guess we have these sort of biases towards certain genres. For you, sci-fi. For me, mystery, detective thriller.
Yeah. And then, anyways, back to what I was saying. Shit.
Sorry.
Thanks. God damn it.
So you were into the whole science thing? The sciencey aspect of it, and that was a very epic.
I really was, because right from the get-go, Ishiro Honda and Eiji Tsuburaya said, we want to make a science fiction heavy movie, or a science heavy movie. And unfortunately, I think that's what killed the plot. I'll be honest, I think that's what killed the plot. And anyways, in terms of this movie being the most epic that Ishiro Honda made, I mean, like, you have the world coming together to fight Natal. You have people from India working with Pakistan. You have people from America working with Russia. You have people from Japan working with China. This was the most epic out of his movies in terms of just size and scope, but not in terms of story. But
I definitely see that international aspect right there, and I think I've seen it in a lot of other Ishiro Honda movies where all the nations come together. Because wasn't he a very huge pacifist?
Yes. Yep.
And so it would make sense that he would want to portray all these nations as being willing to work together, and so that this movie at least represented that aspect of his films in the biggest way possible.
Right. And the thing that also I just want to say, this is probably going to be one of the last times I compare it to the Mysterians, or at least I hope. The Mysterians, a lot of people say, is Ishiro Honda's most epic sci-fi film. And I still say it's this, because the Mysterians, if you look at it, it only affects Japan. What's going on. And really, the Japanese take care of most of it. On this one, it's the entire goddamn world. Like, there's that great scene when the Speeps return, and suddenly the narrator goes, finally the world has something to rally around. And you have people from America speaking to people. You have people from India speaking to the crowds to get them to join the UN space program, to fend themselves off from Natal. it's a really great scene, and just really speaks to Ishiro Honda's mood on world peace. And I personally oh god, I love that. And I guess first thing, I don't know if we still want to talk about our overall thoughts of the movie. I mean, I've spoken.
I guess we let's see. What were things? Oh, I did want to mention when you brought up the fact that the ships and cells were called Speeps, I think.
Yeah.
No, Spips. Yeah, Spips. I thought that was a rather huge... I thought that... I just chuckled every time I saw them referring to them as Spips.
The Speeps?
Yeah,
I like
Speeps.
it. I like it. It means nothing, but I thought it sounded technical enough that I was like, yeah! They didn't just call them spaceships.
Not as cool as Gotengo/Atragon, though.
Oh, God, no. But... I mean, and also, there's just another scene, too, where there's this guy who says, I never thought I'd see these rockets used as weapons of war.
Ooh, yeah.
There was that line there that I was like, oh, that's really cool. That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really too bad that this movie, kind of at the last second, had a low budget, which, for the most part, you can't really tell. But
yeah, I didn't see it either. I thought that was the highlight of the film at the very end.
But you see, if it wasn't for the fact that the budget kind of got cut at the last second, the whole thing with Professor Ahmed, or Dr. Ahmed, which was actually one of the weakest parts in the movie, was that scene. But if it wasn't for the fact that the plot kind of got cut at the last second, I mean, the budget got cut, that would have been a much more dramatic scene. Like, the Natal would have came there and would have blown up the base. They were actually Natal soldiers that stormed it. It would have been a lot more dramatic, and the same thing, and again, that resulted in them having to go with Dr. Ahmed because of the budget getting cut. And another thing that was interesting too was that the Natal people weren't supposed to be those tiny little midget people. It was supposed to be
I wanted to talk about the Natal aliens. They were so incredible. Like I said, like I did with them, like I mentioned with the plot, the Natal they've been building up to these Natals as this great advanced civilization that there is no way you can beat them. And they had that foreboding, large, booming voice who was supposedly like the leader of the Natal. And then all you see are these tiny people that you can easily shove to the side.
Right.
You have like one of the astronaut characters, he was able to take care of like 7 of them while rescuing the woman.
The damsel in distress, which is another issue we'll bring up a little later. But Jesus Christ, were the Natal people a really big letdown. And something that Destroy All Monsters did in terms of the alien invasion, that this movie did as well, but was done better in Destroy All Monsters, was that in both of those movies, the aliens invade, and there is no reason why they invade. They just want to take over Earth. In the Mysterians, they have a damn good reason, and an interesting reason why they come to Earth. They actually don't even come to Earth to really invade. But with Destroy All Monsters, the Keylocks come to Earth and just say they want to take over. Well, in this movie, it's the same thing. But what's done better in Destroy All Monsters with the Keylocks is that the Keylocks scare the living shit out of you.
Yeah.
And then in this movie...
they're incredibly unassuming, yet very unforgiving.
Right. And then there's this movie, where the Natals are just a complete letdown, and if you really look at it, their invasion plot sucks.
Yeah, I mean, their base is right there out in the middle of the open, saying, hey, here's our target, shoot us.
Right.
Or even then, just having, like, one major ship with only, like, 5 smaller ships surrounding it.
Right, and I was like, really? This could have been done a lot more on a larger scale. I just wish this movie had a bigger budget, because then they would have been able to do a lot more. But, so I guess let's just start talking about the story. And unfortunately, it being so focused on the science, the characters become even more paper-thin than normal.
Yeah, very. The only exception the only real memorable character I thought was the one character who was taken over by the Natals.
Yeah,
and
Yuchi. That was
redeeming
he's the
himself with that heroic sacrifice.
Yeah, he's the interesting character, Yuchi. He's the interesting character. But Dr. Ichiro, who was played by Ryo Ikebe, who was the main character in the movie, was really kind of boring, but something that I really liked about him was just how very sort of like, here we go, balls to the wall kind of badass. Was just how, like, straightforward he looked at everything. He was like, oh crap, there's space missiles. Really well done. And you know, I hate none of the main characters are really memorable. Very paper thin, very one-dimensional. They're not even two-dimensional. They're one-dimensional characters. Very boring, all except for Yuchi, which even he doesn't even have enough done for him for you to really be like, oh, that's actually sad.
And the fact that, like, this, you said this came after the Mysterians, and the Mysterians, they also had a similar character switching sides, but he was a lot more interesting.
Sorry, I had to take a drink. Anyways, but oh crap, just
yeah.
It really, Yuchi he just didn't have enough with him to make him that really memorable character that he could have been. And something, though, to this movie's credit that really does good is the action scenes are really well done.
I won't give it that.
In terms of suspense, my favorite one was the one where the space missiles are coming after them and they have to dodge them. The Steves have to dodge them. That was actually a really intense scene. And I thought it was extremely well done. Because you also have Yuchi trying to blow up the ship. Or no, he's trying to shut off the laser, the heat beam. And you have a fist fight going on while they're trying to dodge the rocket, the missiles, and they only have a certain amount of fuel, so they can't really do that too much. That was really good and very, not only scientifically accurate, but I thought it was very suspenseful. It was I felt myself actually really paying attention to that scene. And then another thing that this movie really does well, in my opinion, is that it's able to throw you into this situation, and the situation gets you kind of, for me, it got me emotionally involved. Like, there's the scene where the Speeps launch, and they think they're getting attacked, but no, it's just rubble from the space station, and you see a body float by with it.
Yeah, and it's a very somber scene, and that was the one. It was the one that really had the more emotion. I felt like there was more emotion in that scene than anywhere else in the movie. Just seeing those like dead bodies flying, like floating in space with the wreckage surrounding them.
Right, and also another genre that I'm a really big fan of are the docudramas. And docudramas, this felt very much like a docudrama. And, God, there's just several shots at the beginning where the shots just linger on the characters, and I just love that, because I was like, it's a docudrama. It's not an actual movie, it's a docudrama. And another thing that I really just want to give a credit to Eiji Tsuburaya and his team is just how accurate they were able to make everything with the information that they had. Because remember, at this time, no one had ever landed on a moon. No one knew what the moon's surface had looked like, and Eiji Tsuburaya got it right for the most part.
It'd be awesome if somehow this movie ended up inspiring JFK to start that moon launch program.
Well, I know that inspired, especially the final fight. It inspired the final fight against the Death Star for the first Star Wars movie.
Oh, that is awesome!
Like, George Lucas openly says that. And then the scene where Yuchi gets taken over by the Natal people inspired that scene from Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where he encounters the UFO for the first time.
Wow.
Or the main character encounters the UFO for the first time. Another thing that I really liked was that how whenever somebody gets taken over, it's done through surgery, and it's not just like, someday we're going to take you over. No, it's done through surgery, and their temples bleed. You can tell that they've been taken over by Natal if you see their temples are bleeding whenever they get taken over. Their temples bleed.
Wouldn't this whole surgery consist of like them like beaming down red light at them?
Yeah, like it wasn't direct surgery, but it was done. And whenever the Natal speak to them, their temples bleed. It's very slight, but Ahmed has this. Dr. Ahmed has this. You can see his temple bleeding a little bit. I just thought that was an interesting detail. Like, this movie is full of little details like that in terms of science that I love, and this movie's full of technobabble that I love. It's just the characters suck. The characters really, really suck.
I do want to bring up the score for this movie. You said, now, was this the one that you mentioned that was Akira Ifukube?
Oh God, yes.
Because I really enjoyed the score for the most part. I didn't really think it stood out all that much. Stood out from the other movies. I mean, it did its job well, except there were these scenes where you hear the classic Godzilla military march, da da dun dun da dun dun dun. I was like, yeah, and that's why I felt really pumped up with those scenes of those aerial dogfights.
This is my all-time favorite Akira Ifukube score for this movie.
Same here.
I love this soundtrack. I mean, it's huge, it's bombastic, it's heroic, it's somber. It has everything that a soundtrack is supposed to have, and oh my God, just the opening credit music is so good. Just how somebody has this really bombastic, then it goes into a military march, and you're just like, shit's gonna hit the fan in this movie. I just know it. And it's so intense. The music during the final battle scene is so intense. And then you have the mothership's theme that it's flying over Tokyo, and it's using its anti-gravity beam, and as soon as it uses its anti-gravity beam, suddenly its theme plays again, but it's much more heavier on the brass. Bum 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 bum. God damn it. Oh God. I love his sound. I love his score. It's so smart and it's so clever. And very, again, the space battle music is very heroic. Which that is the English version and the Japanese version are identical, except for the music. Towards the end, in the English cut, towards the end, they cut out all of Akira Ifukube's military march music and put in stock music. And except for one cue, it sucks. And then
I've always wondered why they do that, where they take out the music and replace it with other music. I mean, just what do the American distribution companies have against the original Japanese scores for these films?
Well, for a lot of them for King Kong vs. Godzilla was copyright.
Wait, they had the copyright to the film, but not the music?
Yes.
It's a strange world we live in.
Yeah, we live in a very strange copyrighted world. Anyways, but then we have...
As Dylan once said, copyright is complete BS.
Right. But then we have the soundtrack for this was taken out because they thought it was too fast-paced for the scenes that were going on, which I was like, no! It's like, you people are retarded! Fuck you, Columbia.
You don't know anything.
You don't know anything about movies.
You're ruining it. You're ruining it.
You're cutting out that masterful score. Which you have to, if you listen to the main titles for Battle in Outer Space, and then you listen to the Star Wars theme, clearly John Williams was inspired. God, the music score is beautiful. I just love this score. It's very brooding. It has everything that I want in a music score in it. It really does.
It does make the film look, sound, not look. It does make the movie, the film. It makes the movie itself feel better, bigger than it really is.
Yeah, and that's when you know you have a good soundtrack, is when that works. And my favorite track in the movie actually isn't the big ones. It's the one where news spreads around the world when the Speeps return, and it's like bah, and immediately goes into the dun dun dun, and it's just the drums beating, and I'm just like, this is huge. This movie is really trying to accomplish something huge, and if it succeeds at doing it or not, that's up for debate. But you can tell that just by the score in that scene, it wants to accomplish something huge, and I personally think it succeeded. But you just have the air bases in America and then Japan. You have the satellites turning around. You have all these trucks moving in front, integrated with shots of people moving back and forth, passing wrenches and stuff like that, working on machines. I think that just works, and Akira Ifukube's music made it work. If Akira Ifukube didn't do the music for this movie, I would not like this movie anywhere near as much as I do. because it just wouldn't have worked. Akira Ifukube is the only thing that really ties this movie together, I think, as well as it does, and makes me forget about the characters. That's the thing. Like, if you watch this movie, you have to watch it for the science, you have to watch it for just how kind of huge the movie is, and you have to take it for that. And I think Akira Ifukube is the thing that kind of saves this movie, and on several aspects.
With that said, do you think we're ready to go into final thoughts?
Yeah, sure. Final thoughts on this movie, you can start.
All right. Like I've said before, I am not that. I'm just not really into this one at all. I feel like Battle in Outer Space was a very, very ambitious film. You can tell where a lot of hard work and effort was put into it, such as the score and the special effects. But unfortunately, I feel like they really ignored the most crucial aspects to this film, which are the characters and the story. Now, to quote a much younger and much more intelligent George Lucas, special effects are just a tool, a means of telling a story. With a special effect without a story is a pretty boring thing. Now, granted, this movie was entertaining to a certain extent. However, for me personally, it did not do enough. The more entertaining parts did not do it for me.
God, I love this movie. In my opinion, the best visual effects Eiji Tsuburaya has ever done. In my opinion. Because, let me tell you, when the Speeps take off, some of the most beautiful and breathtaking shots ever. Very scientifically accurate for the time, for what they knew. Visual effects are just very beautifully done, especially that final air fight, that dog fight. So good. The wires were just perfect. Everything ran smoothly. The lasers lined up, and the music was added there, and it just really worked, and you just felt like you were in that battle. And it was a lot of fun. The destruction of Tokyo was great. You just have people floating up. The visual effects were really good. The directing was good. The cinematography was good. The story was lackluster at best. But everything else worked. And because everything else worked, I can't say this is a bad movie. And so I really like this movie. Very nostalgic for me because I just remember that final fight, watching it when I was in like first grade, and me being like, what the hell is this? And not seeing it ever again until I bought this DVD, and suddenly being like, oh, this is the movie! Like, literally, that was my reaction when that final fight scene came up, was like, oh my god, this is the movie I remember so much. I thought it sounded familiar. But, God, I personally love it. In terms of the overarching stuff that Ishiro Honda has made, probably one of his weaker films, but I don't give a shit. This movie is a lot of fun. It was one of the few of these kinds of movies that was received well here in the United States, and actually almost got an Academy Award nomination for Best Visual Effects. But yeah, so I got to give it credit for that, and it was one of the few times that it was actually released majorly here in the United States, not necessarily just as a double bill, even though it was eventually released as a double bill a little later. But a really fun movie. What do you give this movie?
Oh, hold on, let me just get into my bomb shelter just this moment.
Okay, get into your bomb shelter.
Alright. I'm giving this film a 2 out of 5.
Fuck you. I give this movie 4 out of 4. I love this movie so much. Oh, God, I love this. All right, I'm not afraid to admit that I love this movie.
Hey, you know what, Adam? More power to you.
I'm not afraid to admit that I love this movie when many people had big issues with it, and I'm just like, yeah! You can definitely tell I'm a fan of Star Trek because I love the technobabble. But God, I like this movie. I really like this movie. Now,
maybe that's the problem. I'm personally a Star Wars guy as opposed to a Star Trek person.
You should be sorry. No.
That's like our complete opposite opinions on this movie results in this like large debate. We're just shouting at each other until eventually we get to that hypothetical battle between Mechagodzilla 2 versus Mechagodzilla 3.
Oh god, but you know, I personally really like the movie, and so does my dad. My dad really loves the movie too. But on to probably the most famous out of the three movies, and probably the most well-known internationally. The original Mothra, made in 1960.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are your first opinions about this movie?
For the longest time, I've been wanting to see this movie, and when I finally got the DVD box set, I was so excited. And this movie did not disappoint. I really enjoyed this one. It was definitely it definitely approached the kaiju genre in a way that has not been attempted before, where Godzilla was more of Godzilla and his kind, like Rodan and the Mysterians. Even though it's not a kaiju film, I guess Japanese sci-fi. Yeah, like I said, it's all mostly based on sci-fi. Here, has more of a fantasy feel in this movie, and it really approached the kaiju genre in a way that hasn't really been attempted before, where the monster itself isn't exactly 100% antagonist. Rather, it's the humans that were the main antagonist of the film. And as I mentioned before, I really enjoyed this one.
Oh god, me too. I absolutely love this movie. Probably one of the stronger out of the Ishiro Honda movies from the good old days. It really was a revolutionary kaiju film because, one, this was the first time that the kaiju film was both geared towards males and females.
Mm-hmm. That was one of the things I always wondered. Like, I understand that Mothra is considered to be one of the most popular monsters in Japan, probably the second most after Godzilla.
Yeah. And
for a long time, I've wondered why. I mean, after all, it's just a butterfly as opposed to a three-headed dragon. But I guess apparently, this Mothra is very popular amongst the female audiences.
Yeah, Mothra is, and also Mothra is the only kaiju that is female.
Yeah,
if you really look at it, unless it's specifically.
We didn't really get another female kaiju until Biollante.
If you look at it, yeah, and so that also appeared to females, but it also had the action there for us dumb males, and God, it really is just a really good movie. I guess we can just start off with the story first off. Mm-hmm. And just how really original it is, because this movie was just a perfect blend of lightheartedness, but also really in-depth feelings and very heavy stuff. Out of all the kaiju films I've ever seen, this movie definitely has the best mix of lightheartedness and seriousness.
Yeah,
especially with the main human character, Zen.
Yeah. The snapping turtle.
Yeah.
He was my favorite by far. He was my favorite character.
Oh my god, he's so fun. But anyways, let's just talk about the story, and then we'll get into the three main characters.
I did notice that this movie brings up certain elements that were not mentioned, that are never mentioned again in the Godzilla series. Mostly, the biggest part was the fact that Infant Island was apparently was mostly covered in radiation, at least on the outside.
Yeah.
I thought, that does provide an explanation for Mothra and the Shobijin's origins, perhaps.
No, I always thought they were just there. I just thought that it was mainly the natives that were really pissed off. I mean, it was brought up a lot more in Mothra vs. Godzilla than in this one, but I like that. Ishiro Honda wanted to describe Infant Island as heaven within hell. Mm-hmm. And I thought that really fit the description of the island pretty well.
Yeah, although I could see it as more like out of that radiation led to the creation of this so-called heaven. Sort of like a volcano where it destroys everything, but afterwards it provides the elements needed for new life to spring forth. Right.
And then, let's see. I just really I thought the scope of this movie was really huge, too.
Oh, yeah, definitely, because you're dealing with this fictional country called Realistica, which I guess is supposed to be a combination of America and Russia, in a way. That's
exactly what it is, yeah.
Now, was Realistica the only fictional city ever brought into the TOHO Kaiju universe? Or were there other fictional
until Godzilla
countries
vs.
that were
Biollante.
made?
Godzilla vs. Biollante, we had Saradia.
Okay, but when it came to the Showa series,
Yes.
the Showa continuity,
For the most part,
Was it-
yes, even though you can kind of debate that with the Red Bamboo terrorist organization. But
what about Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster? Wasn't that princess from a fictional country?
yeah, but that could technically exist because of the Himalayas, and God, nobody knows how many different types of countries are there.
Oh, okay.
But I guess you could say that too. But this is definitely the biggest one where it was a mixture. That was exactly what Ishiro Honda was going for, was that it was a mixture between America and Russia. And
Now, why do you think he invented this country as opposed to using America?
because I think they were looking against an international incident. I think that's exactly why they did it.
I see. Although they weren't really subtle by the fact that they called their city New Kirk City.
New Kirk City, but great destruction scene, by the way.
Oh, I'm not too sure about. No, not when it came to New Kirk City. I didn't really think it was pulled off as well as the previous destruction sequences.
Oh God, no!
I
I just love how much, like, how all the tracers that were going by and all the anti-aircraft guns and everything. I just love that, like, that stuff there. I'm just like, look at it! It's beautiful.
Let's see. Story. I think. While I feel like there was some like parallels between this movie and the original Godzilla, where Godzilla was mostly a movie about destruction, whereas perhaps this movie was a movie where its main theme was about the fight for peace.
This movie's actually main theme is not that. It's actually about religion, if you really look at it.
Yeah, I didn't notice
because
that.
in the
I think in my notes I mentioned something where where the overall message was like religion promotes peace and tolerance, and
Yes.
to treat others the way you want to be treated.
And then
whether
a lot of that is.
Sorry, before I forget, whether or not there are many different religions out there, and who's to say which one is the correct one? But overall, most religions in general have pretty much the same basic message.
Right. And a lot of that was cut out of the English version, because the English version is close to 20 minutes shorter.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of that was cut out in the English version, and the Japanese version is really a lot better because of it. They had all that message about religions added back in there. And it really is one of the smarter of the Ishiro Honda movies, if you really look at it in that aspect, because this one isn't necessarily an anti-nuclear message, even though what's in there. It's kind of like Rodan. Rodan is the movie where I think the meaning of it was actually more about love and peace than this movie. I think this movie was more about religion. But that's for a different chat. This movie, I think...
we keep going back to Rodan.
Well, that's because Rodan is one hell of a good movie. That's why.
Damn straight.
But it's a really fun movie. It's really good. The story was really original. Again, the original screenplay before they rewrote it, before Shinichi Sekizawa rewrote it, was actually a lot darker than what they wound up going with. It had a lot more to do with espionage, with Rolisica and Japan and stuff like that.
I guess those were taken out because they were provided like a big distract. It kind of like changed the overall mood of the story.
Yeah, and I thought it was a smarter decision, to be honest, because I don't really think this movie would have worked necessarily as a completely dark, Godzilla-esque kind of movie. I just don't think it would have worked.
No, not really.
And the fact that, like, the main characters are a little silly.
Mm-hmm.
And, there was something also that was different with this movie. Thanks. This movie, as compared to others made around this time, especially the god-awful Japanese version, the King Kong vs. Godzilla. That movie had comedy in it. This movie also had comedy in it, but the difference between the two is that this movie, I actually found myself laughing.
Yeah, and I feel like the comedy here was much more subtle.
It's a lot more subtle, right?
Than King Kong vs. Godzilla, which felt more like a Three Stooges movie.
That's exactly what it felt like.
Now, whether or not you enjoy that sort of comedy, that's what's the word?
Slapstick.
No. What's the thing that they say that comedy is subjective? Yeah. Whether or not you like it is, it's all about subjective comedy.
Right. And again, I thought the comedy really worked in this. Anything else to say about the story, really, other than it's really imaginative and really interesting?
I do know. Let's see, the Infant Island. It was apparently, I guess, it's supposed to be based off of Polynesian islands.
Yeah.
Like Pacific Islanders or Hawaii or something.
Yeah, that's what Ishiro Honda said, anyways. Yeah,
when they were designing. Rather interesting. And the character, the Infant Island natives themselves, they were portrayed with makeup, right?
Yeah.
I see. At least I guess were they always portrayed with makeup, like Japanese and makeup, in all their future appearances?
Yeah, they were. In Mothra vs. Godzilla, it was toned down, but it was like that for just about all of them.
Yeah, because I guess it wasn't. For me, I guess it wasn't as noticeable as, say, King Kong vs. Godzilla, where they're obviously trying to be like Africans.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've always been against that sort of thing. I guess you can call it blackface, or in this case, darker brown face. But I'm not sure what if all of it is considered blackface.
This is not whiteface.
The act of doing that sort of thing. I've never been a fan of that. However, I guess I'm kind of. I guess it's sort of okay. I guess if they're trying to portray a race, they can probably find the actors for it, sort of.
See, I've never had a problem with it like you've had. I just said they were using what they had, and
I really did not like it when you did it in both Gappa and Godzilla, King Kong vs. Godzilla. But then again, that was another race they were portraying.
Yeah, you see, I never had that. That's interesting that you had an issue with it. In that case, do you have a problem with the natives in the original King Kong?
I can't remember. Were they portrayed by actual African Americans or not?
Many of them weren't.
What?
Many of them weren't.
Weren't. Okay, yeah, I do have an issue with that. However, I understand that was the 1930s and that was a different time. And here, this is the 60s, and by this time we've already had the civil rights movement, at least here in America.
No, actually, no, not yet. Not yet, actually. That happened in the mid-60s, late 60s. This happened in,
61?
59, 60, yeah.
Oh, okay, and this was Japan, a country that's not as politically, what's the term?
Well, they weren't diverse either. Japan wasn't necessarily diverse. The story of them getting all the Caucasian extras was hilarious for this movie.
I feel like this movie features more Caucasians than any other kaiju films we've seen before.
Yeah, this really does, and it's because of Newkirk City. It's because of really yeah.
I feel like they just picked up any Caucasian character, Caucasian person they can find off the street.
That's almost what they did. That's almost what they did here.
Be in this movie.
They asked the guy what would get people to show up to a filming show, and he said, I don't know, ice cream. So they got ice cream, and it attracted people. That's the story with it, and I thought that was hilarious.
That's hilarious.
And I think it was awesome too, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun story. But anything else to say about the story?
Yeah, I'm looking through it. Let's see.
So you have notes.
Okay, so in terms of the story, when they so in the story you have the Shobijin, and did they themselves summon Mothra, or did the Islanders, they're dancing and they're chanting and singing, did that
it was the Shobijin. It was the fairies, because the fairies use telepathy to wake Mothra.
Okay.
Because they make a huge deal out of it, especially in the Japanese version, where they make that whole thing that blocks telepathy and all that. And
it seemed like they seemed very regretful of doing that. It seemed like I'm not sure, like, it seemed like as soon as they mentioned Mothra, they immediately say, oh my god, you gotta leave, there's Mothra's coming right now. So it seemed like they're only sympathetic to those individuals that they talk to, because it seemed like the whole time they were regretful of bringing Mothra over. But then I'm thinking, didn't they know that Mothra was going to kill hundreds of lives?
Actually, yeah, I think they did, and I actually don't think. I think they even feel bad against Carl Nelson, because, which first off, Wikipedia has that wrong. They say it's Clark Nelson. It's Carl Nelson. But anyways, but I think the fairies just felt bad because you're like, well, you guys are the ones that did this. Sorry. I mean, so like Mothra's gonna come.
So it's like a self-defense sort of thing that they knew was going to go wrong from the beginning?
Yeah. And
interesting that these peaceful characters would use like the most brutal of force when they have no other option.
They have no other option, and they don't want to do it. They don't want Mothra to come, but Mothra's going to come anyways because they're in trouble and they're in distress, and therefore Mothra senses that with the telepathy thing, and therefore is coming after to save them. And I think it's really well done. I mean, it sounds like you have an issue with it.
Let's see. One last thing I would like to bring up. You're probably going to say I'm crazy for bringing this up, but I remember when I brought up the whole issue of being like Pulgasari being an anti-communist movie, and you're like, nah, I don't see it. I think you're crazy.
Well, what? I didn't say you were crazy.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't see it. You didn't think I was crazy, but I know you were thinking it.
Yeah.
I think for this one, maybe this movie. Well, Godzilla was obviously like an allusion to World War II. I'm thinking maybe this movie was some sort of, maybe in the I'm stretching this as like Mr. Fantastic, but maybe this movie is like an allusion towards the American Civil War, because you have Nelson, who is a Caucasian character. He is taking these islanders off an island and use them for personal gain, and so you have Mothra, which could represent the Civil War, because in order to rescue those Shobijin, Mothra has to end up killing many lives in the process. So, in the end, they're like eventually the entire country of Orlisica is against Nelson, telling him, hey, you have to give up these people. And eventually, in order for them to obtain the Shobijin, what's his name? Nelson, he ends up losing his life in the process.
God, that's a stretch.
Yeah.
I don't know if they could have, but the thing that I was really thinking that they were going for was just how capitalism can go too far. Because if you look at it, Carl Nelson's Rolisica's a very capitalistic nation, and Carl Nelson is like a diehard capitalist. And so I think it was more commenting with him anyways, was capitalism can go too far. And I think that was the whole purpose of the two fairies, was that they were supposed to be that representation of being abused by the capitalist system. And if you agree with it or not, that's up for debate. But I think that's what they were at least trying to go for with that anyways.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, there's a lot of hidden meanings. There's a lot of small meanings in this movie that I find really entertaining, and that's one of the things that I find really good about this, is that it's able to do that, and it's able to promote discussion, unlike Battle in Outer Space and The H-Man. So, immediately just speaks that this is one of the stronger Ishiro Honda movies.
Yeah. I guess one thing, this one last thing, I keep saying one last thing, the one thing that was introduced, the one concept that was introduced here that was never shown in any of the Shobijin's future appearance was their natural language, which sounded like very electronic.
Yeah, I like that. I liked it.
I was really taken aback when I first heard this, because again, the only time, I've seen the Shobijin in nearly every other Godzilla movie, but here, they're just like, I was like, wait, hold on, is there something wrong with my TV or something?
Right. I liked it. I personally liked it.
Very unusual, but it was an interesting concept that, and apparently they can translate their language into Japanese by using telepathy.
Yes.
Again, another interesting aspect that shows that these characters have psychic abilities, and I don't think that was never expanded upon in their later appearances in the Showa era, which was kind of disappointing.
Right.
So yeah, I'm finally done.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about the main characters. My favorite one is Zen, without a doubt.
Yeah, I also like Zen a lot.
And his relationship with Dr. Shinichi, Chujo.
Yeah.
I like that too, because at first they really don't like each other, but it wasn't until the mouse goes missing and Zen's really good with the children that suddenly Chujo is like, I actually like you. And a good friendship forms out of that. I really like that. I like that a lot. And I think Zen is just a fun character. Chujo is also a pretty fun character too. He's kind of like
that token scientist character that you apparently need to have in almost any kaiju film.
Right.
But he's a very likable, very charming one at that.
Yeah, he's not like Masada. He's actually really interesting. Or I thought he was very interesting. Right.
Yeah. And this actor, he's another one of those actors where even though I know his name here is Hiroshi Koizumi. Yeah. I didn't knew his name before, but he's one of those characters with a very recognizable face that I've seen in other movies.
Yes, he does. Very, very recognizable. Yeah, he's like, his first film was in Godzilla Raids Again, and what's interesting is that his character comes back in Godzilla Tokyo SOS.
Oh yeah, I really like that.
Yeah.
It was really nice seeing him. I mean, even though I did not see Mothra when I first saw Tokyo SOS, knowing that there was that level of continuity I thought was very incredible surprise.
Yeah, it added more credibility to the movie. And then
Michi.
Yeah, Michi. You know what's funny is if you watch Mothra vs. Godzilla and then you watch this, the roles are completely reversed.
Yeah.
The photographer in this movie, Michi, is very down to earth, very serious, while it is the journalist played by Akira Takarada in Mothra vs. Godzilla that's very serious. And in that movie, it's the photographer that's very silly, and in this movie, it's the journalist who's very silly. Then, of course, we have the scientist. But anyways, I thought it was really funny, and actually, I thought it worked well. I thought the two really worked well together. It's nowhere near as good as it is in Mothra vs. Godzilla, but I thought they worked well off of each other when they were together.
Definitely agree with that. I also like Michi's idea that where she has his belief, the idea that philosophy that seeing is believing.
Right.
And I thought that was an interesting aspect to her character.
Right, and I just love how they work together as a team. Even the head editor, played by Takashi Shimura, one of the greatest actors of all time. I just love the banter that they have. You can tell that they're friends.
Yeah,
you can tell that they've worked with each other for such a long time.
They've been working together for an awfully long period of time. That they're very casual with each other. Right.
And then let's talk about the main guy that I love.
Nelson?
Yeah.
He was a very charismatic actor.
He was so fun to watch. He is the Doctor Who from King Kong Escapes of this movie. He is so fun to watch, and
I just love that evil grin he just has whenever he's he's like secretive and conniving.
Yeah,
and he has that cool laugh that
he's
all
so over the top. He's enjoyable. It's great. Oh man, such a fun character. And God, just so much fun. I had a lot of fun. Like, he's one of my favorite villains ever because of just how, or in the Kaiju series, just because he's so entertaining. Every single scene that he's in, he's just so expressive and so conniving and just so slimy. You just want to punch him. He's so fun. And I can definitely tell that Jerry Ito, the man who played him, was having a lot of fun playing him. You could just tell tell how much fun he was having. And
most definitely.
Yeah, he was a lot of fun to watch. Also, I just want to say something that's interesting in this movie that isn't normal for Ishiro Honda is the scene where the natives get, like, massacred.
Oh, yeah. Although it was kind of distracting that they don't have any blood on them. You just see them, like, fall down with the gun sound effects.
Well, this is the 60s, so I understood it. But, I mean, that was
it was a very dark scene, very out of place for an Ishiro Honda film, where people are getting gunned down like that.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect that with a Honda film, and this scene, the Japanese version's even longer. And they just get gunned down. I mean, there's no honor about it. They just get gunned down. And then you have that one who's, like, begging for Mothra to return, and then he dies.
Oh, yeah, I like that. I like that scene as well.
Yeah, and the music really worked for this movie, too. I will say that. The music really worked. The music on this movie was done by Yuji Kozeki, who did a lot of stage music for, like, live theater.
Oh, yeah, it definitely shows, considering that there is, like, a live theater. There are many scenes where, there are live theater performances with the Shobijin.
Right. Yeah, and it also felt that way in this movie. Like, the music in this movie, other than the iconic Mothra song, to me, this music, nothing in this movie really stuck out in terms of its music. For me, anyways. It kind of felt very generic. I mean, it was good and it fit this movie, but it's like I wouldn't buy it and get it on my iPod, which is unlike.
I would agree with that. Although maybe I would have to watch the movie again just to specifically, pay attention to the score.
Right. It fits the ambience definition pretty well. It's just there. And it works when it's in the movie, but if you listen to it on its own, it's very kind of bland. Or at least in my opinion, but
yeah.
And I love why Akira Ifukube turned down the music score, or doing the score for this movie. Yeah, he turned it down because he said he didn't think he'd be able to write.
It was outside of his range.
Yeah, he thought it'd be outside of what he felt comfortable with, and that just speaks more to Akira Ifukube, is that he was able to admit it. Because to be honest, I really don't think this movie would have worked as well with Akira Ifukube doing the music for it. I thought his music scores are just way too dark to really fit this kind of comedic, lighthearted kind of movie that this is. So I think it was it was a good thing that he turned down the role, or he turned down.
I did want to bring up this point. When you mentioned the music, there were those scenes where the Shobijin are singing the classic Mothra theme as well as other themes. I just realized while watching, how are they able to sing in Japanese when at that point it was established that
they're not singing Japanese. They're not singing Japanese. They're singing their own language. They're not? Yeah, that's not Japanese.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's explained in the audio commentary. I always thought it was Japanese too until I heard the audio commentary for this movie, where they said they basically wrote down these lyrics and then created a fake language and just turned it into that.
Okay, I see now.
Yeah, the Peanuts who played the two fairies were never singing in Japanese. They didn't start singing in Japanese until, Ghidra the Three-Headed Monster.
Oh, okay.
With that song.
We failed to even mention the Shobijin / fairies as characters.
Well, that's because they're not really characters in this movie. They're there.
They're more like a plot device?
Yeah, that's what I felt like in this movie, which is unlike in Mothra vs. Godzilla, where they're actually a very key point to the plot. And this movie,
as well as in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster,
right? And they hardly ever.
They were very active in that movie as well,
right? And this movie, they hardly ever speak.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, because again, this is being the first movie, but I mean, they're just not anywhere near as key to the plot as they are to in Mothra vs. Godzilla, and especially in Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster.
Mm-hmm.
But they're still there, and whenever they're on screen, it's really cool seeing the double projection stuff. Which I guess, let's move on to the visual effects.
Okay. Now, I highly enjoyed these special effects here. I love them.
Really imaginative too.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Oh, I just want to say, was the Mothra larvae puppet / suit, was it larger than was the prop itself larger than it was in other films? Because it looks really a lot bigger here.
Most of the other suits, or the larvae suits, just contained one person, and this one it contained two.
Two, okay.
Yeah.
Was it taller? Well, not taller in a way,
no,
but
it was just a lot longer. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a lot longer, and then of course you had the puppets. There was like 3 different adult Mothra puppets. One of them had more flexible wings than the larger one.
I love the wings on these puppets.
Oh yeah.
I just have to say, I've always had an issue with the Heisei era puppets used to portray Mothra. I thought the wings were very terrible in my opinion.
Well, they're very static.
I thought that the ones in the 60s looked so much better than the 90s.
Yeah, and I mean, it's really also hard to compare the visual effects from this movie to the one in Mothra vs. Godzilla, because the ones on Mothra vs. Godzilla blows the visual effects in this movie out of the water. But
so it's a different puppet in both films.
Oh yeah. Oh god, yeah. Oh god, it's a different puppet in Mothra vs. Godzilla.
What about the puppet in Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster? Was that a different puppet or the same puppet? Because it looked the same
puppet. That looked like the same puppet from Mothra.
Okay. Yeah, I did mention in my review that Mothra looked a little the puppet looked a little worn out.
Yeah, and then of course the suit from Mothra vs. Godzilla got blown to shit in that battle.
I noticed that Mothra often gets like abused as hell in all of her appearances.
In all of her appearances.
She's probably died more times on film than any other kaiju.
But if you want to know my opinion on that, watch my video on Chopper Pilot 5 called Mothra.
Oh, I've definitely I've seen that, and I really enjoyed it. Very introspective.
Yeah, and I still hold to that, because I never looked at her like that until I watched that music video, and suddenly I'm like, oh wait, there's actually more to this Mothra character than I'm giving her credit for. But
yeah, what's interesting about Mothra herself is that, unlike Godzilla, who's full of rage and anger and wants nothing but to destroy all humanity for what they've done to him, Mothra is more of a peaceful character, where as long as you do not bother it, Mothra will just back away.
Yeah, Mothra doesn't necessarily want to destroy Tokyo or kill people.
Right, she's only doing it because it cares for the Shobijin.
Right, and then another thing...
That's a really interesting aspect. I wonder what makes the Mothra care so much for the Shobijin.
I know, that's a mystery that's never explained in any of the Mothra films, really. And I personally like that. I personally like that. To me, that doesn't necessarily need to be explained. There's just a connection there that, there's just a connection there that I think doesn't necessarily need to be explained. And I just think it works. And I bought it. That's the key thing. I bought it.
Yeah. And although I've always liked to come up with ideas as to why they're there for each other. Maybe it's some sort of relationship where they're both benefiting from it. Like Mothra provides protection, and maybe the Shobijin provides Mothra the peace and resolution that she's known for. Maybe they're the ones that soothe Mothra's rage or something.
Right.
And without them, Mothra has no way of controlling her animalistic instincts or destructive instincts. Perhaps, maybe.
Maybe.
It's just a little fan theory, just fan guessing, fan theorizing, I guess.
Right, but the key thing was that I just happened to buy it. But in terms of the other visual effects, one that really just blows my mind is the cocoon visual effect and how she spins the web. That just blew my mind, and especially when they used the Releasican heat rays on it and it just burns and catches on fire. I was like, those are some really good effects.
Now, do you think the atomic heat cannon could have been a predecessor to the classic maser cannons from the Gargantuas?
I personally don't, because if you really look at it, they really are two different entities completely.
I don't know. I've always saw them as looking very similar in design, in basic design.
I mean, it could have been. They were made by the same person.
Yeah, so maybe, he must have been inspired by the Mothra cannon.
Yeah, he very well could have been. And I mean, those props were used later in Invasion of the Astro Monster, but yeah, it was a really good effect. Also, just Mothra coming out of that was a really good shot too, and I thought it was really yeah. And let me tell you, the aerial shots where the jets were fighting Mothra were really good. Were really good as well, considering how risky they were.
I also love the map paintings they use in this film, especially for like Infant Island.
Oh god, yeah. I can tell you what, there is one visual effects shot that just stands out to me a lot more than the others, and it's people are running down the side of this road and tanks are moving down it. And those tanks are miniatures, the sets are miniatures, but that little side isn't. And I'm like, holy crap, that's a really good visual effects shot, because believe it or not, it took me until the audio commentary for me to realize that was a miniature.
Yeah.
And then there was another one where people are running around Tokyo Tower, and you see the smoke in the background, and it looks real, and the only thing that suddenly makes you realize that it's a miniature set is when suddenly Mothra pops up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my god.
It feels like the composite shots and the blue screening effects were really well executed here.
Yeah, this movie was really heavy on the blue screen shots with people interacting with the falling rubble and the tanks and stuff like that. This one was a lot heavier than normal.
The biggest blemish I could, like, the big thing, the one of the, like, I guess a negative part of the special effects I noticed was at the very end where Mothra lands on her, like, cross symbol on the airport, at the airport.
Yeah.
And there you can see, like, you have the live action characters at the bottom of the screen, and at the top of the screen it's all, like, a blue screen of Mothra, and you can see, like, the scratches on the actual blue screen itself. So you see all these, like, black tears and specks on that screen.
And again, that was something that that's something that they can't avoid because of the film that was back then, the film that was used back then.
Right, I understand that. Yeah, that was something that they could not fix because that was like a physical thing while they were filming.
Well, so you see, like, you bring it up. I never complain about those because, in fact, it actually makes me like the movie more, to be honest, in terms of their visual effects, just because it shows me how much we've advanced since then, and it just shows me just how creative Eiji Tsuburaya and his crew had to be in the making of this movie.
I guess for me, I grew up watching these sorts of movies on VHS, and because of the quality of VHS, there was that they kind of like hid away those blemishes, so you're able to like get sucked into the film more. So in this HD era, you're able to notice those things. So it kind of, I don't know, for me personally, it kind of lessens it only slightly. But at the same time, I still just have a greater appreciation for the work they've done.
Yeah, you see, I don't have that problem at all. In fact, it actually makes me appreciate what they did more. But anyways, I find the visual effects to be some of Eiji Tsuburaya's most ambitious. Not his best, but his most ambitious. And
because this wasn't a guy in a suit. This was an actual puppet.
It was a puppet. It was also a guy in a suit. It was interacting with the puppet
in multiple ways.
God, yeah, it was definitely some of the more ambitious stuff in terms of wire working as well. And really well done on his part.
Rarely did I ever see I don't think I ever saw the wires on Mothra.
Yeah, I never saw the wires on Mothra, which is unlike several of the other ones where there's like one shot where you can see the wires or something like that. This movie I never really did, and the jets were also really well done too because the missiles launched perfectly and everything added up to make some really great visual effects. The only drawback that I saw with the Mothra suit was that in Mothra vs. Godzilla, you had her head moving around, you had her legs moving and stuff like that. In this movie, she's very stagnant. And I think it was just because of the technology that they had available for them at the time. And so I don't really complain about it, but it's just unfortunately I saw Mothra vs. Godzilla before I saw this, and so it was kind of a bit of a downgrade if you watch it like that. But at the same time, now that I'm older, I'm just like, well, they did what they could with what they had, and it just makes me admire it that much more.
I'm just glad they got the wings right because that's like the biggest aspect of Mothra, and if they got that right, I was easily able to forgive the rest of the puppet.
Right. Right. Same here. Same here.
They just moved so fluidly, so lifelike.
It felt like they actually could fly. Right.
Yeah, it looked like it had weight to this creature had actual weight to it.
And God, why didn't we talk about this? The freaking scene where Kobe Dam breaks.
Oh yes, that was awesome.
That was awesome.
I don't think they ever attempted to try a dam destruction scene like that until like Megalon.
Until Megalon, yeah, and Megalon.
Ironically, considering how special effects driven and how production wise how expensive that scene must have been.
Well, considering that scene looks great in Megalon, but God, I love the story behind it. Was that the guy who designed it, something Inoue or something like that, Akihito Inoue or something like that. Eiji Tsuburaya wanted him to make it, and he basically did everything Eiji Tsuburaya wanted it, but tripled it in terms of size. And so that meant like triple the amount of water being used. And Eiji Tsuburaya was really pissed off at him at first, and Inoue just was like, just wait. And suddenly everything fell into place, and all of a sudden Eiji Tsuburaya looked at him and said, we needed more water. And Inoue went triple over the amount that Eiji Tsuburaya originally wanted. And so he was like, we needed more water. So that just explained their relationship with each other right off the bat. But,
we need more water, damn it!
I already went triple than what you already want. Whatever.
Then quadruple it!
But really some of the best visual effects out there. I just loved it. Because everything looked so real. And everything interacted so perfectly. It was so well done.
What was interesting to note is that at the very end, where you had like the Mothra flying over New Kirk City, I really noticed like the models there looked very different from like the Tokyo models. Like everything, like I guess the American
that's because
style buildings were so giant and so compact.
Yeah, Tokyo. Their architecture is a lot different than what it was in New York. Newkirk was designed after New York, and if you look at American architecture versus Japanese, they are quite different, and I thought it worked.
Yeah.
I thought it really worked.
I've always wondered what a kaiju film would be like, for them to try to sneak their way into those crowded building blocks.
Right.
I mean, we had Godzilla fight in New York and destroy all monsters, but it didn't look like how it looks here.
Right. But
I thought Godzilla in New York, yeah.
Yeah, it was Godzilla in New York. He blows up New York. He blows up the UN building out of all places. But I thought it was really well done. And especially the anti-aircraft guns and everything. But
although I wasn't a big fan of the cars that were being tossed about while Mothra was like flapping her wings. I thought the cars themselves just didn't look as good as they could have been.
I didn't have any problem with it. I thought they looked like miniatures, but I was like, well, that's what Eiji Tsuburaya had.
Well, yeah, maybe that's I guess maybe that's my problem. Like, everything looks really convincing, but all the debris flying around in New York City just looked.
Well, I mean, there's like that one shot where the car crashes through one of the windows, and I love that shot. And then there's another one where it hits, where a car hits a water pipe right in the right spot, and suddenly you see a little bit of water leaking out of it, like it just put a hole into the pipe. And I was like, that just adds credibility to it. A little shit like that I love. But yeah. So, final thoughts on Mothra? Unless you have anything else to say?
See. Nope, I think we're ready for final thoughts on this one.
Yep.
Okay. Mothra, unlike Battle in Outer Space, Mothra was a movie that had great special effects, but also had a really fantastic story. The characters were really fun to watch. The villain, he was evil. He was deliciously evil. It brought so many iconic concepts, such as Mothra and the Shobijin and Infant Island. That iconic Tokyo Tower cocoon scene is something that that has always remained in pop culture. And overall, there's a reason why Mothra has remained as popular as she's been for the last, God, like almost like 50
like
years
40
at this
years,
point.
yeah, like 45 years, yeah.
No, 45, yeah. So yeah, there's no doubt about it. This is an instant classic. Definitely up. It's yeah, one of my. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites, but it's the one that I definitely come back to every so often. As for you, Adam?
I love this movie. Not as much as Battle in Outer Space, but pretty damn close. A lot of fun, lighthearted, everything you said, I agree with. So, not really much else to add to it. So, what would you give this movie?
I give it a 4 out of 5.
Oh, God. I give it a 4 out of 4. I fucking love this movie. Highly enjoyable. So, with that said, Andres,
yes.
Thank you for joining me. It was a lot of fun that I finally was able to talk about these movies with somebody else who also knows these movies just about as much as I do. It was really enjoyable.
Well, thank you, and you're welcome.
All right, I was able to talk about these movies. Finally. Okay. So thank you very much, and
thank you for giving me the opportunity to have like one-on-one discussion with you.
Heck yeah. I always like the one-on-one chats more than like the ones where there's like 100 million people.
Yeah, where we just go off on a 20-minute tangent not related. That's tangent that's not related to the main subject. Right.
Sons of Sarah. But yeah. But again, thank you for joining me. Make sure to subscribe to this dude. This dude is amazing.
Thank you.
He makes a lot more sophisticated reviews than I do.
You're too kind.
You're too kind. Yeah, and definitely check him out. Compound of Chaos is coming right around the corner. I have more reviews coming up, more Mass Effect stuff coming out too. And stay tuned for that. And I'm Adam Noyce, and this is Andres Perez. And sayonara.
Until next time, everybody, take care.